It's that time of the week, baby! In this video, I'll be analyzing Corn's perspective from a lounge match. This is the first analysis in this series where I'm analyzing someone's lounge event, so naturally, it'll be a wee bit different this time around. Hopefully, this will be a nice change of pace from the wars that I've been covering over the last 2 months. Also, I'm accepting 3 more analysis submissions as of Monday, the day I'm making this video. Check out the description and join my Discord server if you want to submit your perspective. But without further ado, let's start giving her, bud. Just before getting started, if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your minds. Starting things off, we got Twisted Mansion. I think Korth generally plays this race decently, not too many mistakes, and just chilling on the track. I'll mainly be going over his mushroom usage here. And as always, when I say you, I'm most likely referring to Korth. Okay, I have mixed feelings about you chaining your triple shrooms into the last set. On the upside, you were able to pull triple greens, which are invaluable in lounge. Probably the best item you could have possibly pulled there. On the downside, however, you did kind of waste your mushrooms, and there is a chance you could have pulled an item that was much less useful than your shrooms. You did have space before the last set, so what I think you could have done instead is taken the ending grass cut with 1 shroom, quickly assess what's happening around you afterwards, and maybe then chain your shrooms into the next set. This also could have prevented the likelihood of you getting screwed over by the horn, although you did play around it pretty well. What I'm trying to say is that you wouldn't even have to consider the horn situation had you been more strategic with your mushrooms. Just something to keep in mind though. You did get a great chain after all. I think it goes without saying that you were in a pretty weird situation when the guy in front of you screwed up after the glider. I can appreciate that you tried to space out from him on 2 different occasions, but I think your best bet would have been the brake drift to give yourself as much space as possible, as I'm surprised you didn't get lag trailed. That's just one thing though. I honestly think you should have held onto your shroom instead of taking the cut. I say this because you had a solid lead already, and your teammate was in second. There was previously a blue shell about a lap before the second one came, so there was a good chance you'd get blued here. Your teammate would probably drop out to let you dodge a blue anyway if he were to pass you. I don't think it was a bad play shrooming up, but I think you would have been better off holding your shroom. Alright, no questions asked, this was a pretty awkward situation for you. And while you were still able to manage 4th, I am very surprised that you didn't get screwed over here. Having triple greens in front of you and a red just behind you and a fireball or 2, well, I think you were fine to take the top path here. You did get a very lucky pull given your situation. If you got any possible item other than triple shrooms, you should have taken the bottom path to be safe. You spaced out really well, no doubt about that, but I think 9 times out of 10, you get a worse spot than 4th here. Holding onto your triple shrooms was really good though, as if you got hit, you could recover right away. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm all over the place with this situation, but honestly, that sums it all up. You were in a terrible situation given what was around you, then you got an incredible pull, you spaced out really well, and you were able to avoid everything. Pretty insane. But again, if you did not pull those triple shrooms, you should have taken the bottom path to be safe. Either way, nice finish. Next up, we have Electrodrome. I think out of the 3 races I'm going over, Korth could have played this race much better in particular. But that's what the JPGivin'er analysis is all about. So let's see how Korth did here. Well, it's pretty obvious what the mistake here is. Hitting the plant is one thing, and I'm sure you know that was a stupid mistake on your end. But what can we do to ensure that doesn't happen again? It all comes down to your approach. If you aren't taking the shortcut, you should almost never drift before this ramp. It isn't faster to get a mini turbo before the ramp, at least to my knowledge, but you weren't aiming for that to begin with. You knew from the moment you trekked off the ramp that there was no chance of you avoiding the plant as long as you were drifting. So for the future, just don't drift off this ramp unless you're taking cut. Cool? Cool! I know protection is cool and all, especially in lounge, but it was inevitable that most people behind you would be shrooming up. For that reason, you had no real reason not to shroom up. You couldn't even see any reds behind you, and even if one popped up out of nowhere, you could have either shroomed immediately after getting hit, or passed more people as you would have been in the very front. Besides, I'm sure getting hit after taking the shortcut would have been much better than you getting redded in the middle of the pack. So putting it all together, you didn't have much to worry about by spamming your fire so you could shroom up, and even if you did have something to worry about after the fact, you could have just shroomed for recovery as you did after the glider. At the surface, this may seem pretty unlucky. The guy pulled triple bananas, and you couldn't do much to avoid them. Or could you? I can imagine the only reason why you brake drifted a little bit was because you were in the pack and you didn't have a good idea of what could happen if you brake drifted more so than you did. However, you only looked back once on the big straight, and it was pretty early on as well. I think you could have looked back a bit near the end of the straight, then you could have a better idea of what the situation was behind you. If the pack was right on your rear, then yeah, there wasn't a lot you could do here, because it wasn't a bad idea chaining your shroom. But if you saw that the pack behind you was more spread out, you could have brake drifted a lot more than you did and could have avoided the trail. It didn't matter a whole lot as you went on to get a decent spot at the end because it's lounge and it's never over till it's over. Just try to keep an eye on the situation behind you and maybe you'll be able to get out of sticky situations like the one we just went over. Lastly, we have Grumble Volcano. Corinth had a pretty unlucky ending to this race, so when we get to that, I'll talk about approaching situations differently to minimize the chances of you getting unlucky. Until then, I still got a few things to talk about here. Okay, this is going back to what I talked about on the last lap of Electrodrome, another situation where you should have checked what the situation behind you was, and you would have had a lesser chance of getting trailed. While you didn't get trailed here, you were very close to getting trailed, and you could have maybe spaced out a lot more had you checked behind you, maybe realizing it was safe to slow down a bit. I won't dive into too much detail here, as I already did earlier, but just keep that in mind. In general, checking your rear view rather often on long straights is the best thing you can do in regards to your rear view management. Well, I'll be honest, there was no reason for you to be aggressive here. You had the best situational pull in first given your journey to the top, and even though your greens would have gotten stolen, you should not have thrown away precious greens like that, especially in first. Besides, even with the ghost in play, there's still a chance you could have came out on top here. You still would have had your red, and if you were trailing, the guy who came through with triple bananas very well could have been trailed by you. You were already in a really unfortunate situation, but backing all of your items was not the play, whether a ghost or the triple bananas were in play or not. Moving forward, just try to be a bit more appreciative of your protection and don't get complacent thinking you've already won the race. I'm not saying you got complacent here, but that is an easy mentality to slip into when things are going your way. Well, yeah. I'm not going to tell you you should have assumed total control and that this was your fault. This situation sucked for you. It was really unlucky, but thinking like that is going to get us nowhere. So let's go back to right before the last set. Because you were stuck in the pack and the guy you were passing had a good chance of pulling an item to take you out, maybe you could have gone for an item, perhaps even pulling another shroom or protection. You might not have gotten a really good spot like you could have if you didn't get screwed over, but you would be in some kind of better position. Now, let's talk about the red. I don't think it was a bad call to use your shroom where you did, but maybe you could have held on to it. Just a thought, I don't think you did anything wrong with your shroom, but afterwards, you did see the guy with triple greens pass you, and there was a solid chance you were going to land next to him, and you did. I think had you gone around the ending cut, you could have been more safe, and you would have the opportunity to stay away from getting screwed over rather than landing in an unlucky situation. I think not getting a box at the last set was the beginning of the end, but again, anything can happen. So instead of considering yourself as the unluckiest player on this track on this race, try to think outside the box on what you could have done differently. Going around both shortcuts could have saved the race for you in some way, and in lounge, that's much better than finishing in the back. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As for Corinth, I gave you a solid amount of things you can work on, and that's what we're looking for here. Among other little things, I think your first steps toward improvement would be to use your rear view more often on straights, as well as to be a little bit more appreciative of the great situational items you pull. I wish you the best of luck moving forward, and I hope you can take your gameplay to the next level. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and keep on giving her, bud.